Hi, I'm Shane Snipes, and I'm here with Sustainable 1000, and today I'm talking with Nancy LaPlaca, who's an advisor to the commissioner who runs as part of the utility departments here in Phoenix and maybe even the greater Arizona area. What I want to focus on is how we and individuals specifically can get involved in the utility department. What does it mean to be involved as a participant? Nancy, I know you've been working for a really long time in that space, and you've really brought to the awareness of people, I think, what it means to be sustainable at an individual level when it comes to utilities and taking action. So how do you feel about participation and what it means in that space?
Well, Shane, I started out as a public interest advocate about 5 years ago, so really I can't say I've been doing this work that long. In the world of utilities and power and these issues, that's a tiny amount of time, a very small amount of time.
With big changes.
With big changes, right. In an area that has a tremendous amount of inertia, which is the Public Utilities Commissions. And I work for Commissioner Paul Newman, who was elected in 2008 on a slate called the Solar Team, and he is an unabashed solar believer. And I met Paul Newman while he was working to stop a clean coal plant, and started asking some hard questions. And until the developers could answer some of those hard questions, he pushed back on that plant. But to get back to public involvement is critical. The world of the Public Utilities Commissions, and there are 50 around the country, they're called different things. Sometimes the Board of Public Services, sometimes the Public Utilities Commission, sometimes in Arizona we have a unique name called the Corporation Commission. And most of the people who are there are the people who have large vested interests. We don't see a lot of citizens. And I think around the country, in the arena of the Public Utilities Commissions, you don't see a lot of citizens. They're complex processes that are time-consuming, very detailed, require a high level of complex knowledge. And so you don't see a lot of citizens who frankly have the time and energy to do that. But public involvement is critical, because if we're talking about shifting paradigms, if we're talking about changing from a system of large centralized power plants to distributed generation, and sometimes not just distributed generation, but distributed ownership, community ownership, local businesses, that is going to take citizen involvement, because you can't change a big industry like this and a big bureaucracy with lots of entrenched interests and long-time rules without having citizen input. And so, whereas I know people in Arizona look around and say, gee, we need more solar, we only have about 50 megawatts, they don't understand why and who made the decisions to make that happen. And my boss believes in maximizing public involvement, and that we need the citizens of the state to really stand up and demand solar so that he as a commissioner can push forward.
Right, and so as an individual, one of the ways that people might do that, like you said, is going to the meetings, starting to get involved. Are there things that people should read before, or how can people get educated enough so it doesn't sound like gobbledygook and they just can't comprehend it?
And that's a good point, because it does all sound like gobbledygook. There are good local groups like various solar energy industries associations. There's lots of local solar chapters. They can help people understand the timing. There's a commission website, azcc.gov. People can always call our office, and that's 602-542-3682. Again, 602-542-3682.
Sure.
And we can help people understand what's on the website.
And what's your personal cell number? I'm just kidding.
I usually give it out.
Oh, I know.
But no, at some point it'll be too many calls, I hope. I'm waiting for that day, Shane.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the day when there's so many calls
that
I can't answer the phone anymore. That's going to be a great day.
Well.
And I want to point out, too, that in the work that I did as an advocate, which gave me the knowledge to work at the commission and help my boss, there are people all over the country with all kinds of innovative ideas. And so we've got this wonderful laboratory that's sort of coast to coast. And in places where you wouldn't expect it, you have all kinds of innovation and innovative projects and programs. There's a lot of minds working on this. And one of the best things that we have is all this innovation going on out there. And as more people get involved, we're going to have more ideas and more innovation.
Sure.
And when people realize really that there's more, we're talking about more than just the difference in the cost of a kilowatt hour made from solar versus made from coal. There's all kinds of externalized costs that we don't usually consider. My boss, Paul Newman, introduced an amendment that requires utilities to take a look at those external costs: water, air pollution, water pollution, solid waste like coal ash. And it's important because when we start looking at all those costs, and we start looking at, it starts to bridge that difference between the cost of solar and the cost of conventional fossil fuel power. The other thing that we really are not looking at in depth, that it merits a lot of hard looks, is the escalating cost of fossil fuels. So that if you look out in the future, and when solar power starts to pay for itself and you have no fuel costs, you have no fuel risk, in many cases you have no water use, many cases you have no transmission, many cases you feed into the grid at the peak time when power is the most expensive, there's a real value in that. But the system as it stands, we don't consider those values. And those are real values that citizens can articulate. And so you don't need to understand about rate design and, you know, what goes on the balance sheet and what doesn't. You as a citizen can stand up and say, I value clean air, I value clean water, I value the fact that we're not going to be shipping coal from Black Mesa, that we're not going to be using our valuable water resources to ship coal, the fact that we are going to reduce our transmission congestion, that we're going to reduce peak load, that we're going to empower people and educate them about our energy choices. Those are all things that we don't take into consideration.
Sure.
More than just, you know, the spread between fossil fuel, so-called cheap fossil fuels, and clean energy.
So for you, what are some of the pain points that you as an advisor have kind of taken into consideration and said, you know, these are pain points that really resonate with my audience? When I'm giving a speech, when I talk about solar, when I talk about the benefits of solar, these are the things in Arizona specifically that people go, hey, maybe I should consider solar now. What are some of the ways that you've connected to the audience like that?
Well, we've connected with them on water recently. That's a big connection point. And so this has been a very fast-growing state. Arizona grew in the last decade 20 to 25%. So a lot of people come out here and they don't realize, you know, just how arid we are. Phoenix gets 6 inches of rain a year. Our rainiest places get maybe double that. And so we don't have a lot of rain. Our groundwater is a very valuable resource. Half of Phoenix runs on water from the Central Arizona Project, which is a 330-mile ditch that runs from the Colorado River up in the northeastern part of the state down to Tucson, 300 miles long. We're pumping water uphill. And as my boss, Mo Udall, used to say, water only goes uphill when it's flowing towards money. So we're pumping a lot of water uphill, and people realize that water is...
Sorry, the camera's shaking because I'm laughing.
People realize that water is a valuable resource here. We actually spend a huge amount of water on agriculture, but power uses a lot of water. And if you look across the United States, thermoelectric power plants account for half of the withdrawal of water in this country. Now, because Arizona grows so many crops, melons, lettuce, that we ship all over the country, we use an enormous amount of water for irrigated crops. But people get it here, that water is valuable. And when you look ahead at climate change, and the climate change scientists are telling us that the Colorado River flows are going to decrease if we continue to pump more carbon in our atmosphere and heat up the planet. There's a climate scientist at the U of A named Jonathan Overpeck, and he says that historically Arizona had 7 days above 110 degrees, 7 days. Now we have 31.